Geraldine, so happy to have you.
Hi, everyone. Wow, what an incredible introduction. I'm so joyful to be a part of this with you guys. I'm humbled and blown away by all the work that you put together to bring this amazing event. So, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
I'm glad we're finally all together. That's good.
Yes, me too. And Neil, what an incredible presentation. I really enjoyed hearing every part of that. It was just so perfect.
Thank you.
And a great segue into what we're going to talk about next as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so wow, what a great weekend. I'm so excited about everything that we're going to be learning about this weekend. And I wanted to talk a little bit about hybridization and also what hybrids are to kind of get a little interesting look at this subject and maybe deep dive into what it really means to participate, not just participate, but to be a generator of this incredible experience of co-creation that we have and that we are a part of. So I do have a little presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. As you heard, my work has guided me to focus on not just talking about the subject, but really focusing on training people to activate their multidimensionality in order for them not to just hear what we talk about, but to experience, to explore, to see if what we're talking about is true for you. And I think that is essential, not only to your ascension process, but to the things that we're experiencing. Okay, so let me open my little screen here one moment. Okay, I'm going to go into presenter mode. Did I do that right? Yes. Okay. Give me just a moment, making sure that I'm sharing this correctly. Okay, excellent. Excellent. All right, so we're going to move through several things. The main focus of my presentation today is to bridge the gap in understanding. One of the things that I focus on through the work that I do, not only training people to work with their multidimensional body in order to access these levels of understanding, but to understand what is the role in the hybridization program. As you know, my lifelong experiences, some of you might know my story of being a contactee. I have many life experiences since a very small age. And studying my own experience as well as listening to hundreds of women and men from around the world in my support group, hybridmother.com, learning and constructing a very interesting spherical view of many little pieces of each experiencer that brings a valid piece of information for us so that we can understand what is hybridization, what are hybrids, how do they play a role, who are we, and what are we here to do? So we're going to go back to looking at the very origins of that, just to get a little picture as to what we're talking about when we talk about interdimensional beings. The things that we are encountering in these realms, whether conscious experiences or in dream state, we are interacting with beings interdimensionally from all different dimensional layers. And through history, we have very beautiful depictions and wonderful artistic renditions of the connection, the moment of union, of contact with these seemingly extraterrestrial beings and physical beings, us humans. And this goes very deeply into a profound understanding that we are not talking about something external. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about how that is, but also let's deep dive into the nature of our reality so we understand how we come to be. Okay, so from source, from the emanation of source. What is source? Is infinite potential. It is the source of all. It is what I call white light. And from that white light begins to fractalize into spectrum, color ranges of frequency. And each one of these beings that we create these images for, these images are things that are commonly seen online with different vibrational frequencies. Each one of these different beings that we have kind of seen descending, beginning from the very beginning of of the concept from the Enochian concept of Sophia breathing life, and then creating these descendants from the archons, and then them breathing their life force, breathing the pure source life force into a fractalization form. And these essences of life force that are fractalized now become these organisms, and the organisms descend from these, or fallen angels. What we heard as fallen angels actually come down into a range of spectrum of different species that were created from this source that manifested into the physical. Each one of these manifestations that we see now, these are pictures that are just commonly found on the internet when we think about ETs and ET beings. But each one of these beings helps us understand a piece of our perhaps evolutionary process, not only biologically, but also energetically, how we kind of express ourselves energetically. And every single one of these beings holds a certain vibrational frequency. Humans have the ability to see very specific range of frequencies, which means that we have the ability of seeing specific colors, sounds, feelings, sensing through our senses, these vibrational frequencies. And frequency is how we communicate with our interdimensionality, with our world around us, in and around us. Now, how we tune in to these beings from other dimensional realms is by tuning in to other vibrational frequencies that we, through activation, have the ability of accessing. The wavelengths of vibrational frequency, depending on how they're moving, provides an opening within our entire organism in order to intermesh into these dimensions, which we exist within. It's a part of who we are and what we are. And this is important because every time that we have certain contact, the way that the mechanics of co-creation in our everyday life is really based on our subconscious programming. We project into reality the vibrational frequency that we hold within our body, basically becomes a resonance to the other. And it can be physical, people, places, things, experiences. And in these higher dimensional planes, these same mechanics of resonance are also occurring, but they occur in a very profound way, down to the genetic code of what we are. And this is very important because when we start thinking about the hybrid programs, what exactly are we talking about? There's many different kinds of hybridization programs. These are some of the very small list of some of the programs that we hear about a lot. Draconian, reptilian, humanoid hybridization, including Pleiadian high vibrational beings. There's also military, terrestrial programs of hybridization. So all of these different kinds of beings, species, and I'm putting just certain three main points here, because let's say draconian reptilian, let's say some people think that it's only low vibration, but actually any of these species that are interacting with us can participate in the hybridization program. It's not about the species that they're in, but it's about the vibrational frequency, because essentially we are literally like a cocktail of DNA. Each one of these hybrids that are being created are utilized many different bloodlines to create. Now, when I had my experience, I was taken to the planet Maya, in which I was introduced and to a lot of information, and also my hybrid children. And what's interesting is that the Pleiadian constellation plays a tremendous role in history when we take a look at the meaning of procreation and hybridization. And it's a very beautiful and complex history when we look at the symbolism of how creation plays an essential role in the existence of mankind. We see it in many different cultures around the world, the concept of procreation. And many people that experience the hybridization program seem to connect with different kinds of beings. And one of these hybridization programs is a Pleiadian hybridization, humanoid hybridization program. And I find it very interesting how in history we have a lot of very interesting depictions of that. And we have the fallen angels that have breeded with humans to create lives, more hybrids as well. And we have these Pleiadian beings that have gone down. And also later on in history, you know, genetics have also been looked at in many different stages of our evolution, including through our world history. So genetics play a very big role in what is important and the information that is being utilized to create these hybrids. Um, the concept of Adam and Eve and the moment where they connect with the forbidden fruit gives us a really beautiful understanding of what creation life force is really about. This picture I thought was excellent because it shows the snake wrapping around the tree of life that symbolizes the tree of life, and the snake representing this energy, the life force energy of wisdom, of light. And when Adam and Eve touched the forbidden fruit, which is the inversion of that light into the physical realm, into the uh, manifesting it only into the limitation of the physical, this is where things start to go into a different direction of the experience in the physical, not in this interdimensional heavenly bliss state. And this has a tremendous amount of symbolism in regards to the mechanics of co-creation and bringing life into the physical. If we understand what this really represents, within this is the key to co-creation of all beings, terrestrial, non-terrestrial, interdimensional, because it is that union, that integration of these life forces that actually creates this incredible power of life. And it's bridging, it's the integration of the feminine and masculine in the three-dimensional plane in which we exist, that we are manifesting these physical forms. So, looking at the egg, the egg has a very powerful symbolism through history. The egg of creation, not only is the egg the center point of the Vesica Pisces, but within the egg itself is a manifestation of these levels of our field. And it's incredible how we see this pattern of creation of these fields of life force, different vibrational frequency that create the construct of what we are. We see this in so many different things in the world. So I'm just going to read this. In Greek myth, particularly Orphic thought, Phanes is the golden-winged primordial being who was hatched from the shining cosmic egg that was the source of the universe, called protogonos, the firstborn, the eros, love, being the seed of gods and men. Phanes means manifester or revealer and is related to the Greek words light and to the shine forth, as well as the Latin Lucifer, which means the bringer of light. So this symbolism of the snake and the egg we can find in every corner of the world, which helps us understand that the wisdom of creation is something that has been embedded within it's a projection of what is part of our architecture of a human. Creation, bringing to life, seeding life, is actually the most powerful life force of the human. And it's not just about procreation, it's about the mechanisms of creation that we participate in. And this is very, very important because the key word here is the manifester or the revealer, the one that manifests. And we see the depiction of this egg in many, many different parts of the world. This is a very interesting diagram that I found about how the eggs are found in different cultures, as well as the snake. This represents this light, the creation point. Also, there are many different folklores in history that focus on the ideas of the child that is basically not only like a chimera, which is the creation, the hybrid product of many different animals coming together. And the chimera actually was very, very famously seen in many different ancient texts, depicting this hybridization, the combination of many different beings coming to be. We also hear about changeling. This is just one example of how they would talk about children that were being replaced. They thought they were being replaced with these fairy children, or sometimes even demon children. But when I first came across this, even the special abilities of the child that they see that are either very highly intelligent, highly active, they even thought that it was artistic children were changelings, that they were actually changed with these children that were highly intelligent beings. But these are the depiction and the conversations about hybrids that we've been having for a very long time. When we meet this new being that comes into the world, that's a completely different organism, it's another level of thinking that comes and breaks the mold of the pattern of thinking, experiencing, and existing that we continue to experience through evolution. And we know that every wave of child generation, every generation that we've had, comes specially encoded with specific information to help that generation, if it chooses to, in order to move forward in this natural process of evolution that we're participating in. So I'm going to actually move quickly through this, but this is just different cultures that also thought about these beings as being, changelings, hybrid-like beings that were found through history. Okay, I'm just going to quickly move through that. So now let's go to this very interesting. Let's go to the Mayan culture again. So we talked about Pleiades and Maya as being part of this Pleiadian hybridization program. When we look at the Mayan culture, there are two of these beings. Again, we find a rabbit, and the rabbit was the one next to Inanna, and also I'm sorry, I forgot this one. The rabbit here, this rabbit that you see here, which represents fertility and co-creation. And so we find that also in the Mayan culture. And the Mayan culture, it was also thought to be like a trickster. And, in modern day culture, we know about the white rabbit going down the hole in the Alice in Wonderland story. And we see the depiction of the rabbit in many different stories, including Easter, the concept of Easter, how Easter was about the resurrection of Christ. But this is very interesting because the resurrection of Christ for Easter is related to the egg as being the center of creation. So, in fact, the idea that this Christic consciousness becomes awake during Easter is this turning point of manifestation that we humans have the ability of accessing within our body at any time. And when we learn how to access that information into creation, when we channel our creative life forces into co-creation, this is something that has been seen in many beautiful depictions throughout history, also connecting with Inanna. And when you see this image of Inanna, she represents the male and the female about the self-control and also the control of your environment, the external control. So she holds on to these ropes. One hand is above, one hand is below the rope. And this represents how, it's also said that this rope can represent a DNA strand. But I find it very interesting that through history we have this depiction of Inanna, which was the mother of the universe, the mother, and how this mother, this maternal figure of fertility and creation, talks about how the mastery over the physical, the internal, and the external is the key to co-creation. And so there's many other aspects of this that we could dive into, but this isn't my focus today to talk about this. But she stands on top of these lions, and the lion represents the sun, right? The sun, the creation, life force. But this is how we begin to understand that the concept of creation through history has meant more than just procreation. Now, Hermes Trismegistus says, if then you do not make yourself equal to God, you cannot comprehend God. For like is known by like. But if you shut up your soul in your body and abase yourself and say, I know nothing, I can do nothing, I am afraid of earth and sea, I cannot mount to heaven. I know not what I was, nor what I shall be. Then what have you to do with God? So this is such a powerful quote if you really understand what it means, because you know there is a certain process to creation, and through many different ways in history we have learned that these occult practices of learning how to the alchemy of the body, the transmutation of life force, the cultivation of intention into creation is actually the key to creating, actually not just bringing and procreating a life, but in everything in this hologram that we're experiencing. We cannot be as God if we don't know how to go inside and see the self, see the true self without these programs, this shut up your soul in your body, right? You just pretend that the soul doesn't exist. You're just this mechanical being in your everyday life. And there's this compartmentalization between the external and the internal. And there's also a fascination with the external. And we negate the internal, which is actually the key to the universe, which is the key to the truth of everything external to us. So this, when we become one, when we become known with ourselves, we have the access to become one. And he's holding the caduce, this serpent which rises up to the top, which is a representation of the alchemical transmutation of life force from the lower level, the sexual life force energy that moves up into the crown, into the pineal gland, to begin to activate the true creative life forces, where we begin to activate the heart, the throat, the third eye, and then have access into the higher dimensional levels of ourselves, where we can actually begin to navigate these higher levels of creation. And it's really incredible how through history this information has been very carefully suppressed, especially by the implementation of religion, which has inverted in such a severe way sexual life force and creative life force energy. And many of the schools of ancient wisdom that talked about sexual alchemy, for example, have been hidden in such a powerful way. And instead, not only religion, but in instilling in humanity concepts of shame and guilt, which create and invert the ability of creation, as in through sex, into something negative and a low vibrational frequency. This is incredibly important when we talk about the hybridization program, because in the hybridization program, men and women are experiencing contact with beings, and these experiences are kind of constructed. And some people claim to have high vibration experiences and end up having these beautiful hybrid children, and some people have very low vibration experiences, sometimes even through violence in these interdimensional contact experiences, and they end up creating these other kinds, perhaps demon-like or interdimensional low vibrational beings as well. So this is important because we become fractalized in this universe, and this life force, without our understanding, is kind of being utilized in an unconscious way. And I'm going to go deeper into that in just a moment. But I believe that within this is the key to understand the soul and how we affect what we are creating. When we begin to activate the higher bodies, we actually begin to kind of direct kind of creation that we're doing. So if we have low vibration intercourse at the time of inception, whether it's a mechanical inception, whether it's through the astral plane, or whether it's through the physical, that vibrational frequency of the moment that insemination occurs creates an incredible explosive life force that immediately allows this soul to begin to anchor into the physical genetic data of the spliced egg into the zygote. And that zygote creates within it a vibrational frequency. That pattern of frequency is defining what it is. And we are experiencing that also in dream state, depending on what dimensional level this hybridization experience is occurring with the kind of being in which you are interacting with, will define the organism that is born from that union. We can counter create and we can co-create. This is incredibly important. These are the mechanics of the human. And we need to understand that when the vortex of the physical body, this vortex, begins to spin at a higher wavelength, higher vibrational frequency, faster movement, not only do we interact with beings in those higher dimensional planes, but whatever comes of that interaction, which is always creation, we are always creating something. This is what we exist for. We are here to experience through creation. And so it really depends, and it plays a huge role in how we're co-creating. Our spin defines the frequency. And this model of this spin, of this beautiful toroidal expression of movement of life force, is seen in all systems in this universe. This is a fractal design of how we process life force through the body. So what makes up this field when this life force is moving around? Well, it's what we know as the morphogenetic field. Now this is taken from Dr. Sheldrake's beautiful, powerful, and super important work on morphogenetic fields. And I invite you guys to check that out. He has these incredible papers on it, scientific research on the morphogenetic field, which is a very complex topic, but is essential to understanding our multidimensionality, and especially in the hybridization program, to understand what form, what shape, what vibrational emanation is crystallized into the hybrids that are being created. Not only me and you, but the ones that are coming in and are essentially being created. But these self-organizing wholes, which is it's like an intelligence. It's a network of intelligence that already knows from this network of whole intelligence how to create an organism. And there's an intelligence behind that, and we're going to kind of talk about that in a moment. But they have both a spatial and temporal aspect, an organized spatial-temporal pattern of vibratory or rhythmic activity. And I just, that second line is really ringing a bell to what Neil was just talking about, dimensions, which is, and also Alan, when they were talking about how depending on the axis of the physical body, it kind of finds itself in these other different dimensions, or it experiences it differently. So that's very interesting. They attract the systems under their influence towards characteristic form and patterns of activity whose coming into being they organize and whose integrity they maintain. The ends or goals towards which morphic fields attract the system under their influence are called attractors. Attractors. Okay, this is super important because, again, how we unite with other organisms, how we become entangled with them, is through this resonance. There's an intelligence to each organism and how it's doing, connecting. The pathways by which systems usually reach these attractors are called chariots. They interrelate and coordinate the morphic units or holons that lie within them, which in turn are wholes organized by morphic fields. Morphic fields contain other morphic fields within them in a nested hierarchy of holarchy. This is so super important because we see this in how we are co-creating. They are structures of probability, and organizing activity is probabilistic. They contain a built-in memory given by self-resonance with a morphic unit owned past, morphic units owned past, and by morphic resonance with all previous similar systems. This memory is cumulative, and the more often particular patterns activity are repeated, the more habitual they tend to become. That's also really important. The more these patterns are repeated, the more habitual it becomes, such as in this concept of reincarnation and the concept of cyclical trauma that is passed down through every generation. So within this morphogenetic field, okay, let's go now micro, macro. The physical body, we come to be. The physical body creates, but we don't create just out of chance. Every single organism that is being created is a product of this field that intelligently creates by resonance, not just the two beings, the parents of the dualistic energies that bring the third to become, but all that we're experiencing on many dimensional planes is also within this field, and we exist at the core of these fields within fields within fields. But we have access and we work within all of them. We exist within all of them. In fact, this is how fractalization occurs. Essentially, the human, let's say you are the center fractalized being, your fractal aspect of your future life is here in one direction. Your, let's say, extraterrestrial aspect is here. Your past life fractal is here. And we are basically interconnected through this morphogenetic field to all of the fractalized aspects of ourselves that we encounter and we interconnect with. And the way that we become aware that these fractals exist of ourselves is through resonance. The human that is dormant and completely unaware is not going to become aware of these fractal aspects, which is why they don't become aware of what is happening. Oftentimes in ET contact and also any other kind of interdimensional and spiritual awakening or intuition even, it's not available to them through the field yet because they haven't reached that level of awareness. Essentially, we are like, again, spheres within spheres within spheres. So the effect that we have in this concept of hybridization is so incredibly powerful. The morphic fields of social groups connected together, members of the groups, even when they are many miles apart, and provide channels of communication through which organisms can stay in touch at a distance. So it's through this morphogenetic field that we can prove how interconnected we are, how we are one. And there's many ways to prove this. I mean, we can look at the genetic history, evolutionary through history, but this scientific understanding that we are part of an intelligent field of intercommunication is how we can understand telepathy, how we can understand interconnection, and also how we can bilocate as well, and also remote view. Because it's through the genetic DNA database that we begin to have access through the morphic field into the all of what we are. And essentially we look like this. You are exploring yourself as infinite consciousness within the fractalization of all yourself. Your hybrids that you create, the children that you create in this earth, the past lives, archetypal aspects of yourself, fractalized of yourself on any timeline. This is basically what time looks like. It's this spherical expression, field within a field. And you cannot measure time in the way that we look at it because it's an infinite potential. So when we look at the DNA now, only 2% of it makes the actual physical body. The rest of it, non-human gene coding, is protein coding is exactly what is managing the information within this morphogenetic field of which we are interconnected. When we talk about DNA activation and shifting of the physical body, either activation or deactivation, we are accessing information from that field. When people go through wild awakenings, conscious awakenings, Kundalini enlightenments, all these processes of awakening that a human can endure, and this is a never-ending process, they are forming and modifying their own genetic code. We understand epigenetics as a form of creating either a healthy co-creative environment within the body or not. And this is important for the hybridization program because this is how we're creating on more than one dimensional plane. As we are moving through this multiversal experience, because the concept of evolution, we think that's an end goal. The concept of ascension, it's not an end goal. This is an ongoing process of existing in the state of coherence and conscious co-creation. And it has to occur on all dimensional planes because, as you see, spheres within spheres, we are interconnected in this network, this lattice-like network within the physical body in which all of these fields exist and we have access to. So let's look at the physical body. Now, I've seen that we originate in this timeline, in this current cycle, through three main dimensional bloodlines, but essentially, these three main bloodlines really are just talking about this Vesica Pisces integration of vibrational frequencies of all potential beings that we come. And what are the beings? It's not the names of Greys, Arcturians, Pleiadians, Reptilians. We're talking about ranges of frequency, which are also a result of more genetic modification of frequency as well. So this kind of Vesica Pisces, this key to creation, this beautiful egg shape that is created is what we essentially are. And we are here to experience this in many different ways as we become this interconnected network of oneness with the whole. You become the whole. We create life. Both men and women have the ability of creating. And of course, we see this in many different cultures around the world, the concept how religion has tried to kind of, invert, change, and hide this true information, which is so powerful to the empowerment of humankind. And instead, the concept of sex and creation has been inverted in a way where shame and guilt has been implemented into culture, but also through social engineering, we move further and further away from understanding the true art of co-creation and also bringing children into this world. There is an art to that as well. There is a way to create a conscious child through these practices of alchemical transmutation of life force, in which the human comes into the purest form of neutral 0 point and brings a soul in from that intentional vibrational frequency. Just like how hybridization program is also utilizing this concept to create specific organisms with specific DNA, activated or deactivated. Our human race essentially is a genetically modified race. You and I, we have been input into the system, into this matrix, and I'm gonna actually reinstate that. There is no we have been put. We are experiencing through some kind of a choice of this morphogenetic intelligence of existing and experiencing within a dualistic expression the ability to experience creation. And that creation has a certain key. The first aspect that becomes that is created in the physical body at the time of this zygote creating the fetus is the spinal cord, and within the spinal cord, 33 vertebrae, every single one of the vertebrae has a very key aspect to the evolution of the whole structure, holographic structure of the human body. This is important because the different DNA codes that are activated will change the organism shape. So, we all start the same. The shark, lizard, chicken, pig, human, we start the same. This vertebrae is being created, and then depending on the DNA that is active in order to create this being, it is modified that way. So hybrids are created in the same kind of process. Um, Talking about this life force of cultivation of life force, when we learn how to transmute that life force into the highest level, activating the pineal gland and the higher senses, we actually begin to ignite the life force that we can embed into this child. In the hybridization program, the child is incubated and then removed out of the body into these incubation tanks. And they are just stated, this is life. This is pure life being created. So many of my contactees, men and women, have seen walls and walls of these incubations. And I find it very, very interesting. Every single one of those incubation tanks is a universe of source, a fractal of source that is available for potential creation. And within these fractals of source, worlds are created. We are contributing to creating worlds, but we are also contributing to the sustainability of this matrix, everything within the 13th dimensional plane under. And how we are experiencing that is that these bloodlines are actually orchestrated through history. All of the relationships that we've had in our life are part of an orchestration through this intelligent field of co-creation. And they are all potential timelines, mostly based on the reincarnation cycle of repetitive behaviors. Again, like as the morphogenetic field said, if we don't break that pattern, it becomes reinforced over and over again. So we become the reinforcers of these patterns that are quite socially engineered through history, through the origin of time. But what is it that we are, what are we repeating? This was a study done by Columbia University, about 6,000 relatives that pan 7 generations. Okay, this was, I thought, a very beautiful, powerful image. But just you and I, 2,000 years ago, we have a relative in common. So we come from an origin point. This human race has been hybridized since the very origin of time. And how this data is passed down is through the mitochondrial DNA. This is how ET contact is essentially passed down through family bloodlines. Each one of the what we are passing down through the bloodline depends on the work of each incarnation, what DNA they activate, what DNA they don't even touch, and what they're going to repeat. We continue to repeat these patterns, not only our participation in the hybridization program, but also how we experience interdimensional contact. And as we are moving through this evolutionary process, we are going to be interacting even more, because the veil is becoming thinner and thinner because of the vibrational expression in which we exist. So from the genetic data, this that's being activated is when the soul incarnates into the physical body, we connect to the DNA. The DNA is the physical hologram of this morphic field. This morphic field, the earth has its own DNA, and each human has its own DNA. Fields within fields of instructions, of information, some which are reinforced and some which aren't. This sustainability of maintaining and creating, co-creating, not just in the physical but interdimensional, is a part of the human. But the human has to really understand that we create or we counter-create. It's all creation through experience, and we need to be conscious of that choice. This is why deprogramming, matrix deprogramming, is incredibly important, to be able to break not only the hypnosis that we are in collectively, but to become aware of what we're doing in dream time, in these dream states. Hybrids like us are interdimensionally encoded GMO in order to exist in the environment for which morphogenetic creates through intelligence of the matrix. Sorry, that's morphogenetic field creates through the intelligence of the matrix. So in this field of creation, we are experiencing these 13-dimensional layers, and we are creating within that. We are here to experience duality. Beyond that, as Neil also mentioned earlier, we experience other things. It may not be duality, it may be something else, and it is, because of the way that light is expressed and how when we access those levels, the interaction, the exchange of the human is a very different thing. The ability to begin to shift and act on that DNA code is from the inside out. We can change our DNA by shifting the input into the genetic code. Spiritually, emotionally, physically, we choose what we're creating, not just in the physical, not just the children that we bring into the world, but also our hybrids. Hybrids that are created with specific concepts can be accessed because we participate in the entanglement as these laws of interaction with all things. We can actually, when we come into a shift in vibrational frequency, we affect our children here on earth. When we wake up and we become conscious, our entire lineage becomes conscious. It begins to question things. There is movement in the entire field of the ancestral lineage. And it's the same with hybrids. When we think, how do we people are having parasitic contact because there's very, very deep rooted belief systems of helplessness and separation. So these can be shifted and changed by changing where you are creating from. The higher you get in a state of awareness and consciousness, the more that you can affect. Hybrids embody genetically modified DNA, just like us. DNA is the interconnected core to the morphogenetic field and DNA database within the matrix. Their DNA is inheriting the DNA of all GMO organisms. Again, it's just a matter of activating and deactivating certain DNA. GMO DNA deactivation equals less soul awareness, and the opposite of that would be artificial intelligence, non-conscious organisms. Those, like in cloning programs, those are also genetically modified in different ways. They are born into the reincarnation cycle to sustain matrix. Each new life is designed with the frequency to pull forward the collective if the organism understands how to activate his conscious awareness. DNA is the key which has to be learned, access to this information. So to shift hybridization participation, co-creation, procreation, we must change how we are co-creating. This is super, super important. And we actually, in the process of entanglement with all these beings, have the ability to anchor more source light into the field, into the matrix, this hologram that we're experiencing. Your vibrational frequency either blocks source, conscious moment of singularity, 0 point, into this creation, or it allows it to come in. So this higher vibrational movement, this vortex spinning of yourself, you are able to embody this bliss state of unconditional love. And this is not an abstract concept. This is a state of being, and it's essential to the mechanics of navigating ET contact. When we are calling contact in, when we are interacting in these realms, we have to be very mindful of the subconscious belief systems, whether it's in fear or whether it's in love, helplessness. All these belief systems have to shift in order to create conscious co-creation. The lower the vibrational frequency and the more debris we have in the body, the more we counter create in the physical and the non-physical. So this is something that I teach my students, and that I've learned through experience of contact. But when we enter a state of creation, the integration of all deprogramming of matrix programming, activation of DNA, which means you begin to become aware of yourself, your fractal self in all dimensional layers through meditation and shadow work, you begin to come into this creator self. You now become this creation. And so this is a painting I just recently did about multiple dimensional layers, our hybrid children, experiential contracts to experience that, and all of the fractalizations of ourselves that we experience multidimensionally.
Wow, I love that, Geraldine.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so just to end, you know, this is we are returning to so we are becoming one, and we are becoming aware of ourselves as this major organism of light, just like that spectrum. We come back to the light from all these experiences and potential possibilities into the self. We are essentially choosing how we experience. So that's the end of my presentation. I think I'm perfectly online. Thank you so much.